I was the only woman on the team, and they thought I couldn't do the job. The first thing people noticed when they walked into our workshop wasn't the machinery. It was me. Every single time. I worked as a heavy equipment mechanic, a field where women were rare enough that customers sometimes assumed I was the receptionist. I'd lost count of how many times someone had walked past me and asked to speak to one of the mechanics. I was the mechanic. And not just any mechanic. I was the best one in the company. Unfortunately, nobody seemed interested in finding that out. My name is Emma, and for years I had to prove myself over and over again while some of the men around me only had to show up. The worst part? Most of them had already decided what I could do before I'd even touched a wrench. The day everything changed started like any other. I arrived at the workshop at 6:30 in the morning with a coffee in one hand and my toolbox in the other. The guys were already gathered around the break table. As I walked in, the conversation stopped. That wasn't unusual. Neither were the looks. Some were friendly. Some were skeptical. Some practically screamed, "How did she get hired?" I ignored them. I always did. My boss, Rick, walked out of his office. Big day, everyone. A massive mining company had called. One of their primary excavation machines had broken down at a remote site. The machine was worth millions and every hour it sat idle cost the company a fortune. They needed someone to diagnose and repair it immediately. Rick looked around the room. I need my best people on this. Before he could continue, one of my coworkers, Derek, grinned. Guess Emma can stay here and answer phones. Several of the guys laughed. I didn't. Rick didn't either. But instead of correcting him, he simply started assigning names. Derek. Mike. Connor. 3 mechanics. Not me. I stared at him. Seriously? Rick looked uncomfortable. The client specifically requested experienced technicians. I almost laughed. I'd been there longer than 2 of the men he selected. My repair success rate was the highest in the company. I had certifications none of them possessed. Yet somehow I wasn't experienced enough. What you mean, I said, is they requested men. The room went silent. Nobody answered because everyone knew I was right. Rick avoided eye contact. It's not personal. That sentence always meant it was personal. I grabbed my toolbox and headed to my work bay. Anger burned in my chest. Not because it was new. Because it wasn't. For years I'd been overlooked for promotions. Passed over for major projects. Excluded from important jobs. Then expected to train the very people who received the opportunities I'd been denied. I was tired of it. 3 days later the mining company called again. And this time they weren't happy. The repair team hadn't fixed the machine. In fact, they'd made the problem worse. The machine still wouldn't run. Now multiple systems were failing. The client was furious. Rick spent most of the morning pacing. Then he stopped at my workstation. Emma. I looked up. What? I need you to come with me. I already knew. A small smile tugged at my lips. Machine still broken? His silence was answer enough. 6 hours later we arrived at the mining site. The atmosphere was tense. Executives were everywhere. Workers stood around waiting. Millions of dollars in productivity had already been lost. The moment we stepped out of the truck, one of the site managers approached. His eyes landed on me. Then immediately shifted to Rick. Where's the mechanic? Rick pointed at me. The man's expression froze. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. She's the mechanic. The manager blinked. Her? I smiled politely. That's usually my cue to fix something. He looked embarrassed. Good. Maybe he'd remember the moment later. The machine towered over us. Massive. Complicated. Expensive. The repair notes from Derek's team were a disaster. Within 10 minutes I found mistakes. Within 20 minutes I found several more. By the 30-minute mark I knew exactly what had happened. The original problem had been relatively simple. But multiple incorrect repairs had created additional failures. I spent the next several hours methodically working through the system. Testing. Checking. Diagnosing. Ignoring every skeptical stare directed my way. By sunset I'd located the primary fault. A damaged hydraulic control module. One nobody else had noticed. The replacement arrived the next morning. I installed it. Ran diagnostics. Restarted the machine. For a moment nothing happened. Then the engine roared to life. The entire site seemed to pause. The machine powered up perfectly. Every system came online. No errors. No warnings. No failures. Just smooth operation. The workers started cheering. Actual cheering. The site manager stared at the machine. Then at me. Then back at the machine. You fixed it. I couldn't help laughing. That's generally what mechanics do. For the first time since I'd arrived, he looked genuinely impressed. The mining company's regional director approached. I was told 3 technicians spent days trying to repair this. They did. And you solved it in less than 24 hours? Looks that way. He nodded slowly. Then smiled. I think we've been talking to the wrong people. The consequences arrived faster than anyone expected. The mining company requested a complete review of previous repair work. My reports exposed multiple recurring mistakes made by senior technicians. Mistakes management had ignored for years. Meanwhile, the client specifically requested me for future projects. Not my team. Not the company. Me. Within months several other clients began requesting me too. Word spread. Fast. Apparently people cared more about results than assumptions. Who knew? The workshop culture started changing. Not overnight. But gradually. The jokes became less frequent. The dismissive comments became rarer. The skepticism started disappearing. Funny how competence does that. Then came promotion season. A management position opened. I applied. So did Derek. Naturally, he spent weeks telling everyone he was the obvious choice. He had more confidence than qualifications. The interview panel reviewed our performance records. Client feedback. Revenue generated. Repair success rates. Leadership evaluations. The numbers weren't even close. A week later Rick called everyone together. I'd like to congratulate our new operations manager. I could feel Derek grinning beside me. Then Rick said my name. The grin vanished instantly. The room erupted into applause. Real applause. Not polite applause. Earned applause. I walked to the front. For a moment I looked around at the people who had doubted me. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked proud. A few looked shocked. Derek looked like someone had cancelled Christmas. It was magnificent. Rick handed me the paperwork. You earned this. I smiled. I know. The room laughed. Even Rick. That night I sat alone in my office after everyone had gone home. The same company that once overlooked me now had my name on the door. I thought about every comment. Every dismissal. Every time someone assumed I wasn't capable simply because I was a woman. The truth was they hadn't made me stronger. The work did that. The determination did that. The countless hours mastering my craft did that. They had only provided the obstacle. I provided the proof. And that was the most satisfying part. I hadn't won because I was a woman. I hadn't succeeded despite being a woman. I succeeded because I was the best person for the job.